Hello, my name is Sophia and welcome to The Show Must Go On. So today I will be talking about Paramount Plus's School Spirits once again, and we'll be talking about Season 2, Episode 6, so let's get right into it. So once again, I will be starting out by talking about some of the most important / some of my favorite plot points. Okay, so I want to start out by talking about Mr. Martin a little bit. Seeing more of him in Mr. Anderson's body was very terrifying. When he's talking to Sandra and he basically says, like, let me know locations that you think she might go to. I'll look for her. Oh my gosh, I was like, please, Sandra, no! And when Sandra points out that he has some blood on his neck from shaving and he says that hasn't happened in years, I just thought that was a really, like, cool touch because it's just one of those things you don't even, like, think about. Like, yeah, he hasn't been able to shave or bleed in 60 years. Another really cool touch that I liked was when he was arrested and he's talking to the sheriff and the sheriff makes him sign a form, and as he's going to sign it, he, like, pushes up his, like, non-existent glasses, and then of course he spells his name wrong. So Mr. Martin is not having a super easy time with this. So next, we learned that it was actually Simon and the rest of the living crew, as I like to call them, that kidnapped Janet. So I was proven wrong. I thought that it was going to be Mr. Martin, but now looking back on it, I feel like I should have known, because I feel like a lot of times it's not, like, the obvious answer, but I don't know, I just thought it would be more realistic that Mr. Martin would have done it, but I can also see why they did it as well. I thought it was funny when Janet says, how do you expect, me to believe that Dawn was able to cross over and that she was able to figure out something that I didn't? Like, I spent all these years researching and she talked to her slinky. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about this much once again, but the whole Nicole and Xavier thing, I know I talked about this in the last video, but I'm sorry. I don't care. Like, I really don't care about this plot line. I don't understand why Nicole got so mad at him. Like, I feel like that's such a weird, like, response to finding out that it was Xavier that she was texting. She's the one who responded to his comment. It wasn't the other way around. Because she was mad about this stupid little thing, it was making her, like, leave Xavier on his own with Janet. And I'm sorry, like, Xavier, like, I mean, I've kind of grown to like you more in this season, but, like, we know Xavier's not the most, good in these situations as, like, Simon and Claire are, so the fact that Nicole, like, left him alone with her, I was like, no. But then we also saw when Xavier was alone with Janet that Janet was kind of trying to trick him, and we saw that he kind of, like, brushed her hair away, and I was like, Xavier, no, don't fall into the trap. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about Maddie a little bit. When Maddie tried to search for what Dawn's key could have been, Rhonda says to Quinn how what you're holding isn't necessarily your key. I know a lot of people were very confused. So now we do know that it is kind of just more something that represents your death. But then we have, so when Maddie goes back into Janet or Mr. Martin's scar, and that woman that we don't know grabs her arm and seems to be, like, looking at the watch and says, we need more time, or first of all, literally scared me so bad. Obviously, we don't know who this woman is. I know a lot of people and myself are kind of speculating that maybe this is Mr. Martin's fiance that we've heard about. I feel like that would kind of make sense. And obviously we found out about how all these scars have connections. And I also just wrote, I find it so funny how Mr. Anderson was just so chill about being a ghost and everything. He's had a pretty rough time. All of a sudden he's just, like, playing golf and we're just like, you know what, go off, I guess. Also with Maddie, obviously we see her find Dawn's scar, but Dawn's scar is very beautiful and filled with marigolds like we saw from the previews. I also really liked when Maddie and Mr. Anderson talked. He kind of comforted her when she saw her mom freak out and everything. I thought that was, like, nice of him. But then it was very interesting when he said, like, don't forget the only way out is through. And as soon as he said that, I was like, I remember Mr. Martin saying something like that. And then, of course, she goes back into Dawn's scar and she realizes that there is this glowing exit door, and she kind of hears like Dawn's laugh. We can assume that this exit door is the door to whatever the great beyond is. Claire is so smart. Like, it's so funny to look back on like last season, because I feel like for a long time she, was kind of the like outsider of the group, because she was kind of the one person that wasn't like as close to Maddie in recent times. But now I feel like she's becoming honestly like the second most valuable asset to this group, like next to Simon, because she's so quick to come up with ideas when they're in these like really crazy situations, like when she calls the sheriff, and then when she sees that he's like on his way to the cabin and she slashes his tires. Like, yeah, I just think Claire and Simon together, like, they just make a really good duo, because they are both very like brave and just willing to do anything. Okay, so now I want to talk about Wally. So first of all, just a little funny moment I want to shout out when he was watching someone placing the name tags, and then he's like, oh no, you can't put those people next to each other, they had a terrible breakup. I just thought that was a funny moment. But oh my gosh, I think literally one of the best parts of this entire episode was the Let's Dance portion of the episode. Oh my god, it was so good. I know so many people are talking about this, but yeah, it was just amazing. And it was just so much fun. Like, I just loved that. But of course, a little like sad part of this episode with Wally was when that guy at the reunion was kind of calling him an asshole. It's just really sad because, I do get the feeling that Wally probably wasn't like actively a bully, but he probably was very much like a follower. Like, obviously he's so different now, and he's such like a golden retriever and like so sweet and everything, that it's like, it like stabbed my heart a little bit to like hear about that. But I do love when him and Charlie kind of have a little heart to heart, and Wally like apologizes for his past. He tells Charlie he loves him. You can see that hearing Wally actually say those words and everything like means a lot to him. So now I also want to talk about Charlie and Yuri. So first of all, I just want to say a little funny moment was when Wally was asking Charlie how he felt about his date that night, and Charlie goes, maybe I'll just take a nap and wake up next Thursday. And I just thought that was funny, because people were pointing out on Reddit how it was kind of meta, because that's basically us. We wish we could just skip to Thursday every week to watch the new episode. When Yuri is, trying to get Charlie to dance and everything at the reunion, and he's like telling Charlie some stuff from his past. Once again, I just think Yuri's so sweet. You can see Charlie's feeling uncomfortable because when he was alive, he never really got to be open with his sexuality. But obviously he goes back later after the talk with Wally, and he apologizes to Yuri, and then they have their first kiss, which I freaked out because, once again, I love Yuri. I just wanted to say a little bit about Sandra. I feel so bad for her in this episode. Like, I mean, I know she's a complicated character, but I do feel bad for her, because that's the only thing. Like, I do love Simon and everything, but I was like, and okay, I know his phone was boiled and everything by Janet, but I was just like, why couldn't one of them, like, reach out to Sandra and just be like, oh yeah, we're hanging, like, I know it's kind of complicated because I don't know what story they would have told her, but couldn't they have just come up with something? Because, like, that poor woman, like, she finally gets her daughter back, kind of, and then now she, like, doesn't know where she is again, like, that, I just feel so bad for her. And then, of course, we see she has that little bit of a freak out at the school, and she ends up going to a bar, so it's really sad, and, we don't like seeing her relapse a little bit. So when Simon and Janet talk, and he tells her about what Maddie found with Dawn's scar and the marigolds and everything, we see how Janet remembers that Dawn used to talk about marigolds. You finally hear her say that, like, yeah, okay, good for Dawn that she crossed over, but, like, I got out and I got into this body, so why should I give that up? Like, he kind of says how blasé about it, but I feel like you have a conscience. You probably do feel bad that you thrust this innocent person into the afterlife, even though they didn't even actually die or anything. You can see that does actually start to have an effect on Janet. And I just thought the way he talks about Maddie and everything, it was just a really sweet moment. But then, of course, we end off this episode with Mr. Martin finding Janet and literally going, "Found ya," and once again, I just hate this man. He's so scary to me. I'm just like, get away from her. And yes, like some people were saying too, like, I know Simon was trying to give her a last moment to be alive or whatever, but why did he leave her alone? So now I'm going to move on to my little review of the episode. So I'm going to give this episode a 7.5 out of 10. I still thought it was really good. Like, I always enjoy every episode of this show, but I did think it just wasn't quite as strong as like the last episode. I feel like there was too much time spent at the cabin and like dwelling on the whole Nicole and Xavier situation. I also kind of wanted to see more of Wally's reunion. I thought we were gonna get a little bit more of that, and we kind of didn't. And I also thought that, once again, we were going to see an actual scene of the ghosts, like, explaining to Mr. Anderson what happened to him and everything. But some of the highlights of the episode, I would say, were seeing more of Mr. Martin as Mr. Anderson. I mean, of course it's terrifying, but I did think it was cool. Finding out about the Scar connections, seeing Dawn's Scar, and finding the exit, of course. That was probably the biggest revelation of this episode. The Let's Dance scene, of course, was probably one of the best. The Wally and Charlie discussion, the Charlie and Yuri's first kiss and everything, and Simon and Janet having that discussion at the end. So now I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite little editing and cinematography moments of this episode. So just a few little things. I really liked when they showed Mr. Martin, but then you see Mr. Anderson's reflection in the door. I just thought the way that was shot was really cool. I really just liked the vibe of Dawn's Scar. It had a little bit of like a golden kind of glow to it too, and I just thought it looked really pretty. And I also noticed this shot where when Sandra was talking on the phone trying to get a hold of Simon or one of the friends, it's kind of zoomed out and you kind of see the fish, and I just thought that was kind of interesting because obviously we know Maddie's dad was a fisherman, and that, you know, whole thing that happened last episode with Xavier figuring out that he was the fisherman that he saw in the hospital. So I wonder if that was a little like nod to that and how we might find out more about that. And then I also just liked the cinematography of when we saw Simon talking to Janet and her standing there with like the water in the background, and it's all like blue and there's kind of this glow to it. It almost makes it look like she is about to like go into her exit. I thought that was kind of symbolic. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about some theories. A lot of you might be aware of this if you are active on the Reddit page, but if not, so there is an account on Reddit called Shredhead99, just like Xavier's account in the show, and basically people have figured out that this account is probably someone that works for School Spirits, like probably someone on the marketing team. And so now it's very interesting to see whenever they comment under a certain person's theory. But first of all, so there was this theory by this user. They talk about how there's kind of a lot of mentions of cinnamon, especially with Janet. So like we see that apparently Maddie, you know, likes cinnamon a lot, and, you know, Sandra's trying to feed her like cinnamon toast and French toast and all this stuff. And then apparently the two college girls, when they're driving Janet to the campus in episode 3, I think, right? They're talking about putting cinnamon in their coffee. So I just thought that was interesting. Of course, yeah, I don't know exactly what it would mean, but I do think it's weird that they've mentioned it so many times. This person, this is one of the ones that Shredhead said something underneath. The more you heal, the less scary your scar becomes. So they think that it isn't just like, oh, you move on and then your scar becomes beautiful. And Shredhead under that post commented a bunch of flower emojis. So obviously probably hinting to the marigold. So I do feel like that is probably true because that would make a lot of sense. Another theory that I've seen some people say is that maybe Rhonda knows more because she was the only ghost that was there with Mr. Martin and Janet for a long time. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, of course, I don't think Rhonda's gonna turn out to be like evil or anything because she's one of the main characters and I feel like she's one of the most like beloved and everything, so I don't think they would do that. But it would be interesting if we do find out that she knows like a little bit more than she's letting on or something. So this person also says that maybe there's kind of a time limit on Janet and Maddie's body, and so it would be interesting if there kind of is a time limit to how long Janet can be gone, and if she will just kind of be sucked back into the afterlife, or if that will even have a bad consequence on Maddie's body. And then this is just this isn't like a theory or anything, but I know a lot of people were speculating if the girl with the burned face in the hellscape was actually Janet or if it was someone else, because I don't know, it looked kind of like Janet, but almost like not quite like her. I mean, this person pointed out that there was an Instagram post that one of the writers made, and they had a picture with that person with the burned face and everything, and they tagged the actress who plays Janet, and like from the side of her that's not burned, you can tell that it is her. So that basically just confirms that. This is really interesting. I've seen multiple people say that they think Mr. South, the janitor, knows more, because there is that in episode 2 of season 1, he says something to Simon about how there's a lot of scars in this school, and it's weird that like he said something about scars, you know, before we even like knew what that was. And Shred had commented he's seen something. So obviously, you know I have to take it with a grain of salt, what Shred, no pun intended, what Shredhead says sometimes, because, you know, sometimes it might just be them trying to interact with fans and whatever. But I do think that is interesting, because it is weird that he said something about that. The only thing that makes me hesitant about that theory is the fact that we haven't even seen Mr. South at all in this season, and I don't think he's gonna come back randomly at the end. Some people theorize that maybe, like, what if they can't even swap her body back at all? Like, what if once you do a possession, like, that's it? Obviously, that would also go into the sad ending of it all. This person, they talk a lot about, like, literary references, kind of like what I was talking about last week with, like, they talk also a little bit about the Frankenstein kind of allusion and everything, but they also talk about Orpheus and Eurydice, and they say, during season 1, I thought that Maddie was meant to represent Eurydice trapped in the underworld, and Simon was supposed to be Orpheus, who would eventually have the ability to go to the underworld to retrieve her, but would fail and would end up trapped there himself. Now that the plot is thickened, I wonder if Maddie is actually Orpheus, while Eurydice is Wally or the other ghosts in general. Mr. Anderson reads from her paper, is Orpheus bringing Eurydice back from the underworld the ultimate romance, or ultimately problematic? Maybe she will learn how to return to life and want to bring Wally with her, but just as he understands that she should live, she'll realize that she has to let him cross over. I've seen a lot of people say how maybe, like, you know, Maddie is going to play a big role in helping the ghosts cross over, so maybe that kind of alludes to that. And Shredhead commented, oh hell yes. Okay, so this person said, so when Maddie left Rhonda's scar, did anybody else see the light flicker behind her in the hallway? Yeah, I did notice that, and I was kind of confused. I was like, why are the lights flickering? Like, is that just a, you know, cool cinematography touch, or does it mean more? And Shredhead commented, can't wait for you guys to see episode 7. So, don't know exactly what that means, but I don't know, maybe we'll find out more about, you know, all that, like the lights and how Dawn moved on and everything. This person has a theory that's kind of similar to the cinnamon one, but this one's talking about salt. In season 2, episode 2, when Miss Janet and Mr. Martin were talking, they talked about how 30% of people cannot smell cyanide, which is a salt that can have fatal consequences when ingested. I did notice that, like, when Janet and Mr. Martin had that conversation, I did think that was kind of suspicious. I was like, why do I feel like this might come back in some way? So I don't know if there's gonna be something with cyanide or something, but I don't know exactly how that would factor into it. I know some people also commented like cyanide is flammable and everything too, but not sure about that. This person talked about the first 2 films that Maddie and Simon talked about watching together in season 1, episode 1 are a Carrie remake and Night of the Living Dead. He says it's a story about an underdog loser who gets covered in loads of pig blood and then burns everyone who crossed her to death at prom. So obviously, you know, another fire mention. Shredhead commented, I wish I could upvote this 100 times. Maybe it has more to do with Janet. Obviously, we know Dawn died because she touched the light bulb, but water had spilled. But then when Maddie's in her scar, Maddie looks up to see a steady light fixture screwed into the ceiling and pulls the chain to turn the light off. So the problem was kind of fixed, and So this person was saying maybe Dawn was actually able to move on because she had kind of heard, Maddie admit that she messed up when she and Simon did something kind of similar to Nicole, and wish she could be there for Nicole now, and maybe hearing that changed Dawn's feelings about going into her scar. Before, she felt angry and that the girls deserved to die for being bullies and was stuck in her anger, but maybe after talking to Maddie, Dawn realizes that it's possible her friends wanted to be there for her too, so she goes in to get her apology. So maybe they all need to go into their scars knowing they can change the ending. Shred had commented people should pay attention to a thing or two in this post. So that does make me believe that that will be true, kind of, that all the ghosts will kind of have to accept that maybe, now they are stronger and now they can see the situation more for the whole picture, and if they had to relive the situation now, they could change the ending. Like, they would be able to be stronger and everything, and they would be able to, like, forgive the people that hurt them. And this person thinks that Maddie might actually choose to stay in the afterlife because, once again, she might want to be there for the ghosts and everything and help them move on. Shredhead said, when you see a door open, you can run towards it as fast as you can or decide you have unfinished work to do. Maybe we'll see both. So I think it's kind of alluding to how, if they get Janet back there and everything, like, Maddie could really just choose to, just go straight back into her life as if nothing happened. Or, think about that she does have some unfinished work and maybe she does have to help these ghosts cross over and everything. And I think this also could be referencing the ghosts too. Like, they're starting to figure out ways that they could cross over, but they realize that they do still kind of have to work through some things. So a lot of people have been saying this, and I definitely, I think, agree, especially now seeing this. So a lot of people are saying how, they feel like there must be, like, a deeper reason to why so many deaths have happened at this school. Of course, we've been thinking part of it could just be, because it's a TV show and they just want to have, a bunch of characters and everything. But because of all the, like I said, like, the way that the town is literally called Split River, and, in that episode where Xavier sees the TV in the hospital that's talking about, like, the river Styx and the portal to the underworld or whatever, and Shred had just commented yes under. So literally just yes. So of course we don't know exactly what that means, but I wouldn't be surprised, especially if they want to, set up for a possible season 3 and everything. I feel like it would be interesting to kind of allude to the fact that there might be something bigger happening in this town. This person pointed out how every ghost in the school passed away during or immediately after an extreme emotional event. So, like, Charlie with the letter to Emilio, Wally arguing with his mom, Rhonda had extreme happiness from getting into Berkeley, Dawn's sadness at hearing her friends rip her apart, and Maddie's emotional state after the fight with her mom. And maybe there is a deeper purpose to why they've all died and why they're stuck there. Does it have something to do with Mr. Martin and Janet? I don't know. And this person talked about, and this is something that I've really been thinking about and very confused about, is, like, why did Janet and Mr. Martin lie about when Janet died for so long to all the ghosts? Even if they were conducting these experiments and everything, like, they didn't have to lie about when she died. If Janet had actually died in 1960, like they said, Rhonda only died a few years after that, so wouldn't she have kind of been like, I would have remembered someone dying like 3 years before me or whatever, you know what I mean? And I don't know, that might just be a, like, continuity error, but that is kind of weird. Shred had commented this is going to be answered before the season ends, so literally just flat out. This person said they think Maddie's key is her necklace, and Shred had commented, a little ghost tells me you'll get your answer in a visit to Maddie's hellscape. So that is very interesting, because I did not honestly think that she had one, considering she didn't actually die, but I mean, we knew it was a possibility, so it's interesting to hear that we will see her hellscape and what her key is. So now, these aren't theories, these are just something that Shredhead said, that everything builds up to a real life or death moment for more than 2 characters, trust me. So this, once again, makes me think that, like, Maddie's gonna struggle a lot with what to do since she's kind of in between these 2 worlds. Probably one of the ghosts are gonna go through this, or 2 of them. Like, maybe one of them will be close to crossing over, but then they're gonna struggle with that, or maybe even Simon or something will have like a life or death moment. And someone said that they thought Janet started the fire and Mr. Martin got the blame for it, and Shredhead said, "Now that's a theory. I can come up with a few possible motivations for this. What are you thinking?" Is that true? Did Mr. Martin get the blame for something Janet did? Okay, so now I'm going to just talk a little bit about what we might be able to expect on the next episode. So, based on this little preview that they gave on Instagram, they said Janet visits another familiar place from her past. The living try to wrangle Mr. Martin, and by the end, a shocking new theory changes everything. So we see these little images of Janet seemingly in the car with Simon. So I don't know what familiar place from her past they're talking about. Are they just talking about literally the school, or I don't know. There's this photo where it almost seems like Xavier is like tied up and Claire's trying to help him and stuff. And of course we did see that image from the trailer where someone seems to be covering Xavier's mouth, so maybe Mr. Martin will get him and tie him up or whatever. But I am just confused, like, why would Mr. Martin only, like, why Xavier, not like all of them? And then it did show some images to seemingly Mr. Martin when he was trapping Janet in the hellscape. We see Janet say, and there was no stopping him after that. And once again, I'm showing some images that we saw from the trailer because, so all of these at nighttime by the cabin I thought were going to be from this past episode, but it turns out they're probably actually going to be for next episode. And then we see this image where it seems like Janet has an oar, and so I'm assuming she's probably going to use that as a defense mechanism against Mr. Martin. And there was this image in the trailer where it seems like, well, Maddie, but maybe Janet and Maddie's body is like underwater, so I don't know. That kind of makes me confused though, because like if Janet did hit Mr. Martin, then why would she be underwater? And then I just have these other images from the trailer. These are ones that I don't know if they're from next episode or the 8th one. We have Nicole and Claire breaking into, I think, Eugene's storage unit. I don't know, I could see that actually being next episode, maybe. Oh yeah, because also now that I look at it, they seem to be wearing the same outfits. And we see this photo where it looks like an ambulance or a cop car or something, so I don't know, that could be a million things. And we see this image where Janet seems to be, you know, locked in the boiler room. And I do think this might actually be from the next episode, because I do think this might be when she's kind of telling them about what happened, and we will probably see that flashback of Mr. Martin putting her in there. The synopsis of the episode is Janet resorts to violence to escape Mr. Martin, then demands Simon take her back to school. She finally provides answers to the ghost about her work with Mr. Martin while he uses Mr. Anderson's body to terrorize the living kids. But an alternate description says Janet is finally ready to give answers. Mr. Martin hatches a plan. Maddie reevaluates her relationships with Wally and Simon, and Quinn makes a discovery. So, of course, you know, most things that we kind of thought, Maddie really reevaluates her relationships with Wally and Simon, so once again, this kind of factors into my idea that we will see Maddie kind of struggle a lot with, you know, the fact that she does have emotional attachment to both people in both realms. And then Quinn makes a discovery is really interesting to me, because I did talk about in my last video, I said how when they had that shot of where Quinn was trying to figure out what her key was and everything, I was kind of like waiting for Quinn to kind of have like more of a purpose than just being like Rhonda's friend and like a sidekick. And then the clues for this next episode that were sent in PR packages. So there's an oar, so of course we kind of know what that is. There's apparently a Split River High School Devil's coin, so people are thinking maybe this is Quinn's key, and maybe that's what she's gonna discover. There was a hat that says trauma is energy, so I think this just kind of alludes to how they're all gonna realize that in order to cross over, or maybe to help them cross over, they kind of have to like make peace with it and like go through their whole hellscape. And there's also a pottery kit, and I do think that in this next episode we're gonna get a little reference to the movie Ghost with Charlie and Yuri, a reference to the scene in that movie where they're making pottery together, because people have pointed out that in season 1 Charlie had them watch Ghost when they had a little movie night, and people were saying they can't pass up this opportunity to reference that movie in this season because obviously Yori does pottery, and so there's that reference to that. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and once again, don't forget to, if you have any other theories or comments or anything about anything I said in this or anything else, please comment it down below. I will be making videos about the last 2 episodes. I'll see you next week for episode 7. Bye!